It's The Late Show with Bernie Quayle on Manx Radio in the Isle of Man. Listeners often send me a link to interesting websites, and I usually refer to them during the program. But every once in a while I come across a site that deserves more than just a casual mention. Such is the case for Elizabeth's Poetry Haven, and on that site there's a very inspirational poem about the Isle of Man. But there's so much more, which I'll tell you about later. I think you'll find it interesting. Elizabeth is actually from New Zealand and now resides in the south of the island. I went along to chat with Elizabeth, and the first question I asked was, what drew you to the Isle of Man?
Yes, well, my Quayle ancestors, I guess, was probably one of the catalysts, but the final catalyst was that I met somebody on the internet, and that was the thing that brought me here in 2003. But I'd always been interested in the Isle of Man right from a little child in New Zealand. When my ancestors, James and Catherine Quayle from Arbury, went to New Zealand in 1859, they left behind one married daughter here living up at Cronkydooney, just behind Colby. Of course, over the generations, where they always kept corresponding with their New Zealand family. Yes. As a child, in the 50s and the 60s, I used to go and stay with some Quayle spinster aunts who lived in Cambridge and in the Waikato in New Zealand, and in the school holidays, and they would talk about the Isle of Man all the time, and yet funnily enough they had never ever been. Yeah. But it was almost as if part of them was here, and so I guess the Isle of Man was always part of my background.
You then started to investigate the island and do a little research using the internet.
Yes, well, prior to that, of course, I'd spent about 25 years doing my Quayle genealogy, which, of course, during that time, I became well versed in the history of the Isle of Man from a personal point of view. But, of course, that also led me to visiting here in 1980. We had actually prior to that 1979, which of course was the millennium of here on the island. We had our own mini Quayle millennium celebrations in New Zealand, where we had a Quayle family reunion of about 400 people, and Violet Corlett from Onken, who was a descendant of the daughter who stayed behind here, she came out to New Zealand to bring the Isle of Man to make it a complete, to represent the branch of the family that was still here. Then I came up to the island in 1980 to visit, as doing my genealogy at that time, and that while I was here I just fell in love with the place. Mm-hmm. And as I flew out, I was here for 3 weeks, and as I flew out of Ronaldsway, there was just this little feeling in the heart, I'd love to live here one day, never ever thinking I would, because I was still married at the time with 2 young children, and but life has its way of, making your wishes come true, so here I am.
You've developed a very great fondness of the island, which is reflected in the poetry you've written about it. When did you actually come to reside here?
I came to the island in 2003. I met this friend of mine who became my partner for a while on the internet. That was in 2002. I was single at the time. I was free. Mm-hmm. So I came up here. We travelled together. The relationship sort of went from partnership to friendship, and in 2005 I moved from where I was living at the time to my own place in Braddon, and that was where I opened up to writing poetry, which I'd never ever had any interest in before. Never written, I'd never really been a writer, although I'd done a little bit with my genealogy, but suddenly all this stuff just kept coming to me, and I started writing, and that was it. That was February 2005.
Well, you've developed quite a following. You have little threads running through your website, and you have quite a following throughout the world to your poetry.
Well, yes, I published a selection of my poetry in October, November 2006, and I was surprised that, it was just a small self-publication, and it was an international, copies went everywhere, yeah. And I was very grateful for that.
Now, I have to ask you about one particular aspect of your website, Elizabeth. I was drawn to the fact there is in the menu on the top the Isle of Man, and when you click there is a reference to something that is of great interest to me, and it is the St. Patrick's Isle Avalon connection, and there is a reference to Mushaba. Now, I don't know anything about Mushaba. Can you tell me something? Is this a person? Is it a religion? What is Mushaba?
Mushaba actually is energies, actually. Original perfect source energies from original creation. They are blended energies of oneness. They're called platinum energies, representing the oneness, the unity, the harmony, the balance, the bringing together of their essence is oneness, unconditional love, freedom, and self-empowerment.
Okay, but you refer on that page as if you're speaking with a person. Is there a...
There is also a historical aspect behind the Mushaba energies. There is a planet called the planet Mushaba. There is also a race of beings called the Mushaba beings. And Mushaba himself is the entity, I suppose you would call, that is channeled through a couple of people that I know of in America, and they channel information about the Mushaba energies. Okay. But it's yes, as I say, they are beings, not embodied beings as such. Although a lot of people who are living on the planet here now have their origins back to the planet Mushaba.
But now the Mushaba that you refer to on your webpage has confirmed to you that St. Patrick's Island is the legendary Avalon of King Arthur.
Well, not so much St. Patrick's Island specifically, it's more that the Isle of Man is the original Isle of Avalon. I have felt for quite some time, even before I connected, shall I say, with the Mushaba energies, the Mushaba connection, that the Isle of Man was the not only the geographical centre of the British Isles or Great Britain, but also that there was a chakra. It was the heart chakra of the British Isles. Every nation has a heart chakra, is represented, like we as human beings. We've got the 7 centres of chakras that every nation has around the world, as well as the earth itself. And I felt that that the Isle of Man was the heart chakra of the British Isles. But then I read about 4 years ago that Glastonbury, I knew that everybody would say that Glastonbury was the King Arthur of the Avalon, and I found out then, I wasn't aware of it before, that it was the heart chakra of the planet. And I really feel now, I haven't confirmed it, or I don't know whether I need to confirm it, it just feels right for me, that because the Isle of Man is the, shall I say, the heart chakra of the British Isles, and because it's the Isle of Avalon, the original authentic Isle of Avalon, I really do believe that it's the heart chakra of the planet.
Well, geographically it is the exact centre of the British Isles, isn't it?
Exactly,
yes.
Exactly, and I felt that for a long, long time. But it's just the feel of the place, and because the Mushaba energies are centred on the Isle of Man, and also because it's also the portal of the life force, original life force of creation, as it's been confirmed to me through the Mushabas, and life originated on this planet as one-celled beings.
Yes.
And it originated here on the Isle of Man, and apparently that's how life developed. As I understand it, very simply, but I don't know enough about it to go into detail.
Well, can you recommend, I know your own website, would you like to give us the address, the URL, the website address?
Okay, my website is www.elizabethafeisst, one word, spelt Elizabeth A with a Z for Elizabeth, A, Feisst, spelt F for Fred, E-I-S-S for Sam, T for Tom, .com.
Okay.
And on the homepage you'll find a series of navigational links where we'll take you to the Isle of Man, and it'll take you to Mushaba, which is spelt M-U-S-H-A-B-A. But there's also other. So if you do a Google for Anaconda Mushaba, who's actually the being on this planet, he lives in Los Angeles. He's in his mid-50s, but he was the being. He was the ensouled being with the one in charge. Charged with bringing the Mushaba force out into the open, shall I say.
Well, Elizabeth, with more people like you confirming, for me, the importance of the link with Camelot, with Avalon, with King Arthur, one of these days the authorities are going to cotton on to this and do something about it, I think.
Well, I do hope so, because shall I say, science, quote, and spirituality come in together, and it's surprising just how close they are coming these days when you read people like Greg Braden and a lot of other scientists are all opening themselves up to the connection of spirituality and the cosmos and the energies and the vibrations and frequencies, that we're all one, and it's time we all live together on this planet in peace and harmony. I think it'll just happen anyway.
Yeah. Elizabeth, thank you so very much for your time, and the best of luck with your poetry.
Thank you very much. My poetry is a little bit on the back burner at the moment because of one or two other directions my spiritual journey's been taking me, but I guess I'll get back to it at some other point. Thank you very much, Bernie.